Hi again. Now, today we're talking with Gennaro Cuofano, who is my friend from Italy.
Pleasure to be here, Jason.
Brilliant. I subscribed to your Substack newsletter, and it was brilliant. And you talk about the AI, the big tech AI, and how that industry is evolving and fitting together and where it's likely to go. Absolutely brilliant. And I loved it. And one of the things that struck me was you wrote these very long articles. There was one every day, or there still is one every day, and written by your AI. And the fact that it reads a little bit like, well, it reads like AI, but it's your voice. It's incredibly helpful, incredibly in-depth, and made me feel more comfortable about me writing with my AI on my own website and pushing my ideas out. So how much do you use the AI to write, and how much do you use it to research, and what are your techniques?
Yeah, I mean, quick premise. I've been in the space for years and used to be like a very prolific author. So like even before like the business engineer, I was, again, I did create this blog called the FourWeekMBA, which used to be like a super popular blog on business space. And before the ChatGPT moment, it used to be like a blog that was going toward like the millions per visits per month, right? And then ChatGPT came out, and the long story short, my blog is 10x smaller than it used to be. And for me as an author, just like for people that code, so just for people that have been like software engineers for years, they accepted the fact already in the 2020s that AI was going to write most of the code. Because if you remember, one of the first use cases that we had for AI, now of course it was ChatGPT in 2022, but one of the first use cases that we witnessed in AI, one was like coding. If you remember, we had like GitHub Copilot already like in the 2019-20, which was like a big hit for coders, for programmers. And then on the other side, also for those like me who've been like writing their whole life. I've been like an analyst for like almost like more than 15 years. And, for me, again, it was quite clear already in the 2020s that AI was going to write most of my text. But back when the first GPTs came out, it wasn't as good as me. Then, as you can imagine, once like ChatGPT started to, come to life, then it was clear that I could write good content and good analysis. However, there was a premise. I never, for instance, wrote anything with the AI on my Substack, if not, let's say, starting in 2024. Why this? Well, because if you remember, of course, AI, the AI ecosystem goes at the speed of light. We are all, even for us that we are like in the space, it's very hard to keep up with everything that happens on a daily basis. Because there is always things that go like that becomes like relevant. And then for me, that one of the things I've been working on a lot in the last years is like the map of AI. I had to redraw it, regularly because the ecosystem gets way more complicated every day that goes on. But again, the interesting thing is we need to think that where we are, and then I give you the answer on the way I'm structuring my whole process. And sorry for the long premise, but I think it's quite important. Again, I think the mental model that many people have right now about AI is that they still think of it as a chatbot interface. It's not. And if you remember, already like a couple of years back, OpenAI started to hide in the UX the ability for you to actually select the model. There was a reason for that, of course, because the UX of UI of OpenAI, of ChatGPT, was getting too messy. But there was also another point. AI back then, like the chatbot, started to use tools, right? And so when AI is using tools, they don't want you to see what's going on in the background, because many times, for instance, they're using different models for different things. In addition to it, they are using tools, and they're also reasoning on top of whatever you need to do in the real world. So this was a transition that already happened a couple of years back. And now we're like in a full swing where the chatbot interface no longer exists. Like everything they're using today, everything from Codex or like Claude or whatever. This is an agent, and so as an agent, it means that it can pretty much it has an harness that can read your context. It can understand based on who you are the things that you can achieve in the real world. So based on that, do I use AI? Of course I do. I have a whole team of AIs, whole team of agents. And at the moment, I would say we are like at a very interesting intersection where I personally have different agent architecture for different parts of my business and for my daily life. But for instance, if I look at the content research and different pieces of it, like I do have a team of like 40 agents that I need to spin in my like terminal that do different things from like research to content writing to like analysis and many other things. And again, we are now at the intersection that is not longer that you're using an agent, is that you have a team of agents right now and you can spin like, 30, 40, 50 agents to do like different tasks for from small to more important tasks.
Right.
But the key point is we're getting in a direction now where you're going to be able let's say in a couple of years to spin hundreds of those agents. And one other interesting point is the model itself is becoming an agent. I can stop here, otherwise I go too long, but the premise was long. But in short, not only I use AI, agents have become like my team on a daily basis that I work with, and they have access to everything that I do from the analysis part, but also from the business perspective. Now, if you want things like, for instance, like Stripe, there are like APIs for agents. They have like the view of the full funnel of the business, so that they can make informed judgments about what we need to improve, just like you work with your own team. So that's how I do it, right?
So no, 100%. And I mean, what I've done is created a business OS, a writing assistant, a coding assistant, and let's say a brainstorming assistant. And I've trained them all to tell me when to go to the others. So if I start talking to business to the coding one, it says, oh, that's a business question. You better move that over. Here's what you need to say. Go and start that conversation. Then come back when you've got the answer. So my agents are helping me to use the right one for the right task and switching between them. And I've been very careful to make sure the business one doesn't know too much about the coding and the coding one doesn't know too much about the writing and so on and so forth. And I find it deeply fun.
It's super fun. Like, or whether, like I would say the most interesting aspect going like in the next 2-3 years, if you ask me which one is going to be the next Anthropic, right? It's going to be the next Claude. Well, to me, the next Claude or like the next Anthropic is going to be the company that actually unifies those agents so that they can talk to each other in a way that is quite open. Because why would you tell your business agent not to talk also coding? I mean, in the end, what we're seeing is this way of verticalizing the agent is also given by the limitations that we have at the moment. But going forward,
well,
and
that is the point, is that I would love to have one that could do them all. And I could say to it, right now we're talking about business, take into account the code, but don't obsess about it. And so you've got these smart conversations like with a human where it can hold all these different parts in its brain and it doesn't get them mixed up and it focuses on the right thing. But actually it's Claude that explained to me that isn't going to happen, Jason. What about the brainstorming? I was talking to Andrea about using AI, and some people use it to go faster. Some people use it to be more productive, to produce more. And then there's also the creative aspect. Mm-hmm. How do you see those three approaches in your work?
Yeah, I think right now, the paradigm of AI, I think we have like two main paradigms of AI. The number one is augmentation, right? Many are looking at AI as an automation tool. It is to a certain extent because it's not that the AI is automating, it's the human with the AI is automating other humans, meaning what we do with the AI is augmenting ourselves. As an example, right now with all those agents that learn from each other, and also they are like, for instance, I put them in like self-reinforcing loops where they can talk to each other, learn from each other. It's like having a team of people that before I could not afford, right? Because if I look at the structure of my agents team right now, it's a team of people that maybe would have cost me, I don't know, 20, 30K per month just to maintain the whole team. Now I can do it, with, I don't know, 10x less, just as a reference number. But the key point is, for me, is augmentation, right? So number one is you are putting yourself, especially if you're a generalist. I consider myself, I think there are like two types of people right now that are benefiting the most about this AI paradigm. Number one is the super generalist. Number two is the super IC, right? Is the super individual contributor. I'm on the spectrum. I'm a super generalist. So I'm someone who's over the years spent a lot of time in focusing and learning a lot about a lot of areas of business. So from my side, as a super generalist, advantage that I have is that I can spin a lot of agents and do things that before I couldn't do. Like as an example, I have an agent that does the UX. I have an agent that does the coding, the backend for different platforms that I developed over the years. I developed my own agent that is like a business engineer agent that does very advanced analysis for the people a part of my community. So again, as a super generalist, the fun part is that I could amplify myself across different domains. And then if you are like a super IC, like a super individual contributor, now you can amplify yourself, become like, if you're a domain expert, you can 10x yourself, which means now you are like way more valuable than you were before. That's like great things. And those two people with the AI are actually automating jobs that before were narrow. And it's not like we're not going to have, we're just going to see jobs going away. It's the opposite. We're going to see the emergence of like many different kinds of jobs, just like we did in the past. Like if you think about it, and right now there is the whole like a judgment layer of AI agents that is quite important. So being like a human that can not just verify, but also know how to tweak the architecture of like agents to make sure that they do like interesting and like valuable things in the real world is quite important, because you can end up spending, we saw different cases of companies blowing up like billions in budgets for cloud code or like token maxing, whatever we want to call it, and maybe not getting anything out of it. So if you're someone who understands the architecture, you're going to have a lot of new roles in that direction as well. But yeah, the interesting thing is one thing right now where we are in the AI space is that everything is going to be an agent, and the models themselves are becoming agents. Meaning, if you are, as something that I've been explaining for a couple of years on the Business Engineer is, if you are like a frontier AI company, like Anthropic or like OpenAI, but now I don't know if you followed, there was the presentation from Microsoft, who also launched a series of models on the frontier AI. Of course, they are like still behind, but they finally launched officially like their own family of AI models. You need to be in the harness, meaning that you need to give back to the AI model the data that comes from the user using agents in a computer, because now the model itself is becoming an agent. We're not judging any longer the model on the capability of predicting or like generating text. We are judging the models on computer use and other things like agentic tasks. And interesting thing is the agent is swallowing the computer. Like we are like in a phase where now the agent is controlling the computer, right? So the agent is doing more and more things in the terminal. It can control everything. It can do anything that you can do with your computer, also remotely. But the key point is the agent is becoming the computer. So we are rebuilding the computer from scratch. That's what this AI revolution is all about. That's why we go back to the multi-layered stack that I look at, because you need to understand that what we're doing today, again, is not just this AI that does interesting things. We are rebuilding the computer from scratch. That's what we're doing today.
Wow. Okay, brilliant. Now, I was talking to Kasper Kulikowski from Google, who's going to be one of the sessions, and he was talking about harnessing the harness around the agent. He works on Chrome and the agent in Chrome, which is going to be super interesting. And one thing that strikes me here is that you're saying, as a human being, we're the orchestrator. And would you say that your assistants are just like employees, humans? Or would you argue that they're not, it's a completely different paradigm?
No, I would say the interesting thing is working with a team of agents works a lot like working with a team of humans. And sometimes you realize it because, of course, right now, again, we have technical issues, meaning that those agents often like forget things because, of course, maybe it's
like people.
Like people, of course, yeah. So, and also like as the team at Anthropic has explained to us, interestingly enough, by using like a set of techniques that also come from neuroscience, And again, we need to make like a very important premise because we don't know what those neural networks are about. Meaning, we all make assumptions and everything. But I would say the most interesting take is you work with the team of agents exactly like you would work with the team of humans. But of course, which means you don't need to micromanage. You need to understand, for instance, when it's time to tweak the architecture, rather than when it's a time to instead let the agents do things for themselves. So I mean, all sorts of things I usually do like with the team of humans, you do with the team of agents. I would say there are like a lot of similarities there, and again, sometimes also the way you work with those agents, it's quite interesting because it's not like you tell them do this thing, right, and they will execute. In many cases, they tell you maybe this is not a good idea, right? And often case actually maybe they're better in some cases, because of course if you're like an employee that is working with a boss, you never see like an employee unless he's like an executive who is going to say to the boss, look, this is not a good idea, unless it's a great employee. But you see that those agents also have this kind of behavior. Now, again, I think this is interesting for everyone because everyone can benefit from it. And there is like a lot of noise now, especially about things like those agents will kill a lot of jobs. And I think this is the fault of the way the AI industry has communicated those things over the years, because there's been like a lot of fear that's been imbued in the way those AI models were evolving. Now, if you look also at the narrative that OpenAI, Anthropic, others are using, has changed a lot. They're now trying to say, look, I mean, the AI is going to be something beneficial for everyone. You just need to get to use it. But in short, yes, I mean, what you get from those agents is very similar to what you get from a team of humans, which means now every employee in the company can have a team, and they can manage like a team of agents to do a lot of interesting stuff from a place that is no longer very narrow. Because if you think about it, I don't know, you have teams, part of the team that is like designing stuff. Don't tell me that it's fun to spend time, I don't know, on a platform, I don't know, like Canvas, doing like very small edits or like doing PowerPoint presentation. I'm sure there are also people that are like passionate about these things, but think about before you would have team of people spending hours in editing small stuff on PowerPoint. I mean, you can spend time now on the creative piece and on all the other elements. And of course, the creative part is quite important. As we were saying before, as we were chatting before starting this, great ideas matter a lot, because a great idea that comes still from a human mind is really a way to choose a direction where there is no data to validate the direction. So it's really a qualitative understanding of the world that is like very subtle. It's very hard to explain why you feel that idea makes sense, but it's very human. And in that sense, creativity is still like very, very human. But yeah.
No, and I've been kind of working a lot like you with my different assistants, and one thing I've seen is the leap, what I would call the leap of imagination, lateral thinking. Is I'm looking at it and I'm having the conversation, and it comes back to me saying, well, maybe that's not a good idea. Here's a possibility. Here's how we might want to organize this. And the machine almost never comes up with something that's a big leap. And I go, oh, I can see what we can do there. And then it always says to me, of course, that's a genius idea, which I love.
Amazing point.
And then, but the big leaps are always me.
Yeah, amazing point. And this is what I explain on the Business Engineer, and there's been like my obsession for over a decade now, which is, the ability of a human mind to actually be relevant in the real world comes to the understanding of the context, then the abstraction, and then the compression. And then from there, you have a set of mental models that help you out, make sense of what you need to do next. If you look at the understanding of the context, that is very hard, because especially for the way those AI models are trained, they're like stochastic, and they're like very, probabilistic, which means that in many of the cases, they will fall under like, let's say, what we call like a normal distribution. So that's why when you ask them something that about any topic, or even when like you brainstorm with the AI, unless you challenge it, you're going to see that the answer always like falls in the meat of the distribution, which in most of the cases does not produce interesting stuff in the real world. Because if for you to produce like interesting stuff in the real world, you need to move to the tail of the distribution, meaning you need to move to a place where you understand the real world context. And in most of the cases, the real world context, especially in business, is always like power laws. It's always like very extreme, right? So you need to move toward the extreme. And the agents, even the models, are not trained for that. It's not in the way that they're done. Now, again, interesting thing is agents, we give them context, they should be able to be better at this stuff, and they will get more and more credit. But again, our human understanding is quite important, because when we are in the loop, we can, have those agents do like a lot of interesting stuff. But great point.
Yeah.
I mean, what you said, it's exactly the work I've been doing the last decade.
Well, and that, I mean, that takes me to another point, which is I use Claude a lot because Claude encourages that behavior in the back and forth. And then I take it to Gemini, and I had the experience the other day is I had maybe 5 original ideas in a piece of text. And I said to Gemini, can you write that so it's more readable? And it literally just took the 5 ideas out. And then I said, oh, you take the 5 ideas out. And it went, yeah, really sorry, and then it put them back in. But Gemini has more of a tendency to go for the most obvious. And Claude allows me to be more adventurous. And I love that.
Very
and the last question in this particular part, because that was question 1. So I'm now going to spin this off into 2 different sessions, and we'll talk about the 9-layer AI stack next. So this session is purely about how you're using AI. I just wanted to point out, you were saying everybody in my company can have a team. But then you run into the thing is it's not because you can do it that you should do it in terms of how you work with your team. And you mentioned earlier on companies that have spent billions in tokens, and it's turned out to be a total waste and they've gone bankrupt. So how do you guard against that?
Yeah, and Jason, sorry if we go too long, but you raise very interesting points. You made me think about new stuff that we should tackle. But yeah, I mean, again, going back to the way those models work, they try to smooth out like the tail, right? They try to remove the extreme because they need to give you a result that can work in most times. And Gemini, maybe the way it's trained this way, it's also about the business model of Google, as we know, because Google needs to go to the consumer. So even though Gemini is at the frontier, it's still like a product of the fact that Google needs to be relevant on the consumer side. So for how much Google can spread itself, because it's one of the best players and it's like a giant and everything, the fact that like they're skewed toward the consumer and they need to win the consumer race, the agentic commerce race, makes them maybe more average. More interesting point. I mean, many developers prefer like Codex because they say that compared even to Claude, sometimes it's less agreeable, because Claude as well, if you see, it is more interesting than Gemini, but as well, it's going to tell it's super agreeable, right? Because it's the way it's fine-tuned in the end. And that's another key point. So this goes back to what we were saying. With those models, with those characteristics, it's very easy to blow up a lot of tokens and having nothing done. As an example, of course, if you see the latest of Anthropic 4.8 Opus, it's very cool model. But if you start using it, it's going to blow so many tokens that you can get very little things out and a lot of spending. Now, I think also the news is a little bit overblown, because I think smart teams out there are really figuring out how to make an arbitrage on top of those tokens. I mean, if you have a smart team of people working in your team, they're going to figure out the architecture to the different things. As an example, if you run like an open flow, I have like different open flows that I do for different types of analysis. I taught them the way I think about the world, the business world, and the way I do analysis. Interesting thing is, of course, in the back end of those models, there are like different kinds of models that I use for different things. So as you can imagine, Gemini and models like Flash are like super cool for doing very fast things, and they're like super cheap, right? And then, of course, there is also the open source piece that you can leverage. But the key point is, you're going to use, as an example, Opus as the strategizer. It's going to be the model that, for instance, does the whole strategy for the other models. And then you're going to use the other ones for executing, so that you have an architecture that is going to be really done to save money and be effective. And that's what I was telling you at the beginning. It connects with that. Like, the next Anthropic is not going to be just like a single model company. It's going to be like a company that routes different models automatically. I was seeing like the news just today that there is like a couple of startups that just emerged in the space from, I think, people coming from DeepMind and other labs where they're working on this issue. You're going to get AIs and agents that will not think vertically across a family of models like, Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini, Microsoft, whatever. They're going to think like across what's the best way to route users for different tasks across different models. And this is going to be the moat. Like this is going to be like next 2-3 years, the company, again, the next like 100 billion company is going to be in that space pretty much.
Yeah, and automating the part that I do, which is I've got a Claude to plan and a Claude to execute. Or in fact, I use ChatGPT 5.5 Codex, can't remember what it's called, because it's very obedient and it does what it says it will do. And it's I find ChatGPT to be more honest. And I did a job interview. So I gave each of the machines, Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude, a job spec for coding. And Gemini, I said, to what extent do you think you can get the code one shot right? Gemini said, absolutely no problem. Claude said, I can probably do 95%. And ChatGPT said, you're dreaming, my friend. I'll maybe get 80% at best. And so I took on ChatGPT because it was the most honest.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
So job interviews for AI. That's where I'm going next. Anyway, that was absolutely brilliant. And I'll just leave with the points because it leads into the next session that we'll be having, which is you were saying you are a generalist, a hyper generalist. This is your hyper generalist, very complex diagram that we're going to be discussing next. And I too am a hyper generalist because I have AI era business engineering, assistive agent optimization in practice, and this is what we're talking about throughout this this summit. And what I love is that we've come along the same way, is we've both become hyper generalists, and it's delightful because we can look at so many different things and bring all the pieces together in a simple model that people can understand in one diagram.
Yeah, it's I would say it's addicting, right? So
yeah,
we feel like it's a game that will never stop doing, but then we need to go back to, as they say, the meme, we need to touch grass, right?
Yep. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Gennaro. I'll see you in the next session.